Welcome back to Real Takes, where we are all movie love all the time. I'm Stott, and we usually start by talking about an organization I care about. And I'll just say, I talked about this a few weeks ago, but we're into winter now, and there's inflation in the country, and there are a lot of people struggling to make ends meet. So any way that you know of in your community to connect with people who are struggling and help them out. I know there are community centers that will take gift cards from oil companies and give them to people in need for their heating bills, and soup kitchens and food pantries, and anywhere you can help out like that, please do. I'll list a few places here in Provincetown, but obviously if you're somewhere else, you're probably going to want to give locally, which is wonderful. And if you're struggling, please reach out, because there are people who want to help, and there are organizations that can provide assistance. So please don't struggle alone this holiday season and this winter. There are people who are there for you. So I have been saying for the last few weeks that this is the last Real Takes episode, and this is the last Real Takes episode, and I have been more confused than ever about what to do for the last episode, because there's still tons of movies that I love that I haven't talked about, and this is my 69th episode, and sometimes I've talked about multiple films in an episode, and I still have, tons of films that I didn't get to. Like, here are all my notes of trying to figure out which movies to talk about, and it broke my heart sometimes, the ones I didn't talk about. It slayed me. So yeah, it's been really hard figuring out what to do. Oh, here comes Meatball. Yeah, this was my original spreadsheet for the show. You want to come up? You want to come up, Meatball? Come here. Come on. Come be a part of the last episode. Come be a part of the last episode. Yeah. Oh, yes. You curl up on all the papers. I think that's a great idea. So I plan to keep talking about movies, but just in a different format. I'm going to take a break. And honestly, if there are a couple things I've learned from doing this, it's how much I still don't know about movies. That's Meatball making the camera shake. And how many great films I still haven't seen, and how many more great films are being made this year to see and next year to see. I feel like, when I first thought about doing this, my first thing was, okay, how many movies do I really want to talk about? And then when I came up with a list of over 100 really easily, I realized, oh, okay, I have enough to talk about here for a while. And doing this has only made me realize how many more movies I want to talk about. And it's only fed my sense of inspiration about film and talking about the creative process. So I've thought about, what I would have done if I were continuing on. So here are a few movies I would have talked about in detail. So we're ending the Sagittarius season, and Steven Spielberg is a Sagittarius. Obviously, he's one of the most prolific directors of the last 40 years. And Close Encounters of the Third Kind is one of my all-time favorite Steven Spielberg films. It's one of his early films, and yes, it's a sci-fi movie, which is not usually my thing, but I think of all of Spielberg's early sci-fi films, well, all meaning E.T. and Close Encounters, as being allegories about being an artist and about the person who sees something nobody else can see. And in this film, he even cast François Truffaut as the scientist who truly sees and understands what's going on around him in a way nobody else does. So to me, it's just, I go on that ride, seeing it really as the artist's journey. So then let's see, we're heading back into Capricorn, and we're right around Jane Fonda's birthday. And I have to talk about Jane Fonda whenever I can. And I would have wanted to talk about The Electric Horseman, which is a romantic comedy she made in the late 70s with Robert Redford. They made 4 Robert Redford films together. So I can do that better. But also, it's my last Real Takes. I had to jump in. Of course, I had to jump in. So obviously, Jane Fonda and Robert Redford made 4 films together. People like to think Barefoot in the Park was the first film, but actually they were in the Arthur Penn film, The Chase. They were both supporting parts. Marlon Brando is the lead of that film, and actually Robert Redford's role is pretty small. He doesn't come in really until the last third of the film, but they were in that. Then they were in Barefoot in the Park. Then they made The Electric Horseman. And then they didn't work together for 40 years until they made this very sweet movie that's on Netflix called Our Souls at Night, about 2 older single people who find each other. It's really lovely, lovely film. But this is directed by Sidney Pollack, and Robert Redford and Sidney Pollack made 7 films together. They started working together in the 60s on This Property is Condemned, and then Robert Redford had starred in several of Sidney Pollack's biggest hits, including The Way We Were and Out of Africa. He did not star in Tootsie, which I think would widely be considered Sidney Pollack's other biggest hits. I'm a big fan of Sidney Pollack's late 60s and 70s work. I mean, I like all of his filmmaking, but and he had worked with Jane Fonda before on They Shoot Horses, Don't They?, which is a devastating look at suffering during the Depression era and actually, using people's suffering as entertainment. So a totally prescient film when it comes to a certain kind of reality TV that we participate in today. And Sidney Pollack has said that he really owed Jane Fonda his career because that's the movie she made that sort of changed how people saw her as an actor, and it also put him on the map as a director. It's a very raw, intense film that I highly recommend. They Shoot Horses, Don't They? So they had worked together once 10 years previously, and Robert Redford had worked with Sidney Pollack a lot. And so I think there's a real comfort between the 3 of them that shows up on the camera. And then there's also what I'm going to talk about right now. I just love this movie. I can watch it anytime, anywhere, because, it was the 70s. And so they made rom-coms that were also statements against capitalist corruption at the same time. And then if we went deeper into Capricorn, I would have talked about Steven Soderbergh again, who we talked about last year with the film Let Them All Talk. And this year I would have talked about Out of Sight, which might be, I don't know, one of the best movies ever made. I know critics who put it on their top 10 list of best movies ever made. It's based on an Elmore Leonard novel, and it stars a lot of people who would become sort of regular cast members in Steven Soderbergh films. So it stars George Clooney, who was actually attached to the project before Steven Soderbergh was. There was another director who decided to go a different direction, and then Steven Soderbergh came in, which is sort of hard to believe because it's such a great manifestation of his style and what he has to say cinematically that it feels like it originated with him, but it didn't. So building on that, Steven Soderbergh said that when he read the script, he felt like he really understood the tone of the film. And there's interview footage of many people involved with the film saying they have a hard time talking about what it is because it's a love story, but it's a heist movie, but it's, it's operating on a lot of different planes at the same time. And Soderbergh said that he felt like he really understood, this sort of light, serious energy that needed to be harnessed for the film, like when it needed to be more serious, when it could be more light, how those energies worked together. He just felt like he knew how to do it. And he said the challenge was convincing George Clooney and Scott Frank and the other producers. And once he did, as I've said, he works with a lot of the same actors regularly, and he and George Clooney have actually made many movies together, including the whole Ocean's trilogy. So they've had a long working relationship. And then Don Cheadle, who is also in this movie, has had an even longer working relationship with Soderbergh, and I think made more movies together, including the brilliant Traffic. Luis Guzman has worked in many Soderbergh films, but the whole cast, even the people who are just on this one Soderbergh film, are fantastic. I mean, the list goes on. So Ving Rhames is George Clooney's co-star. Jennifer Lopez is the other co-star and is fantastic in this film. And the chemistry between George Clooney and Jennifer Lopez is off the charts. Then we have Albert Brooks, Isaiah Washington, Viola Davis in a really early role before I even knew who Viola Davis was. And then Catherine Keener, a perennial favorite of mine, who we've talked about in relation to the Kelly Reichardt films. Wait, not the Kelly Reichardt films, excuse me, the Nicole Holofcener films. Whoa, totally different filmmaker. The favorite, always Catherine Keener, in a really interesting small role for her. And then Samuel L. Jackson comes in uncredited in the final scene and has a long scene. It's not a couple lines. It's a full scene at the end of the movie, completely uncredited. So the cast just goes on and on and on. Michael Keaton comes in and reprises his role from Jackie Brown because both are based on Elmore Leonard novels with the same character. Like, I could just keep going and going and going here with the delights of this cast and how great everyone is. And I've said before that I think Soderbergh's talent at ensemble films is like Altman-esque. He's just got a gift in that department. So much to appreciate here. Plus, it has one of the best sex scenes ever from cinema. And Soderbergh said that he got the idea for how he shot it from a Nicholas Roeg film in the 70s, where there's a sex scene. And there's the sex scene and it's intercut with the two people putting their clothes on after the sex is over. And Soderbergh took that idea and he flipped it and he intercuts the sort of flirtatious, heated discussion and interaction that Lopez and Clooney are having as they're moving toward a sex scene with the sex scene. And it's very well executed. I got so distracted talking about the sex scene from Out of Sight that I forgot to wrap up my jumping in correctly. So now I have to jump in on my jumping in. We're going out like that. We're going out like that, people. So just can't recommend Out of Sight enough. It's fun. It's smart. It's well acted. It's beautifully directed. It hits all the buttons. So please check out Out of Sight if you haven't seen it. And I know that I don't usually talk about holiday movies at the holidays because there aren't that many that I really love. I'm sorry. Maybe I have a heart of coal. I don't think so. But I am going to shout out to a couple of holiday movies. Obviously, Carol is a huge favorite. The Charlie Brown Christmas is a huge favorite. You can't see it. They hold on to it really tightly. It doesn't stream, so that's a bummer, but the Charlie Brown Christmas. I love About a Boy, which starts at Christmas and ends at Christmas. I also love Holiday, which I talked about this summer when I talked about George Cukor, Katharine Hepburn, and Cary Grant. And I'm going to go on record right now as saying that I think Die Hard is a Christmas movie. That's my take, and I will die on that hill. I don't care enough to die on that hill, but I won't let go of that opinion, I guess, is the way I would say it. And then one last holiday suggestion. I will say, if you want to know, my favorite Jimmy Stewart holiday movie is The Shop Around the Corner, the Ernst Lubitsch film. Now, Ernst Lubitsch is another director that I would love to talk about sometime. A beautiful director from the 30s and 40s in Hollywood, German director who, like so many others, came over during the rise of Hitler to Hollywood and made some great, great films. But The Shop Around the Corner with Jimmy Stewart and Margaret Sullivan is just a total delight. So if you're looking for some light Christmas fare, I highly recommend The Shop Around the Corner. And it's very hard to say goodnight tonight and know that I won't be coming to you for a little while, but there's more movie talk coming soon, I promise. And I have really enjoyed sharing all these films with you and sharing what inspires me about them, how they inspire me, I think would be the better way to say that, how they inspire me. And I hope that that's inspired you and entertained you. And I hope that you have a peaceful and loving holiday wherever you are. And if you're struggling or feeling alone, I know that place too, and I'm sending you love. And I won't see you next Wednesday, but I will see you very, very soon. So thank you all for tuning in and listening, and there will be more soon. Thanks for watching Real Takes. Hit the subscribe button below so the algorithms will tell you when new episodes are out. And if you want to support Real Takes, please visit my Patreon page where you can join at any tier from $2 to $100 per thing I make. The $15 tier is specifically about supporting Real Takes, and you'll get behind the scenes information and be thanked in future videos. See you next Wednesday.